Hello, everyone. We're going to continue our reading of the book, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. And today we're going to be reading pages 13 to 18. We're going to finish up chapter 1. And chapter 1 is a long chapter, and there's a lot of information about the characters. Where we left off was Pony Boy got beat up by some socias because he made the decision to go to the movies by himself, which isn't really a good idea in their neighborhood. So we learned all about the characters: Pony Boy, Soda Pop, Darry, his older brother, Soda Pop, his middle brother. We learned about Johnny Cade, Two-Bit, Steve, and Dallas Winston. So at the bottom of page 12, Pony Boy describes the difference between the uses of the word tough. So there's TOUGH and TUFF are two different words. Tough is the same as rough. TUFF means cool, sharp, like a tough-looking Mustang or a tough record. In our neighborhood, both are compliments. Okay, so a record is referring to like what we would have called a CD, but you guys don't even know what CDs are, but it's music. And we know Mustang because in our web quest, we went into detail about the car Mustang. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What were you doing walking by your lonesome? Leave it to good old Steve to bring up something like that. I was coming home from the movies. I didn't think. You don't ever think, Darry broke in. Not at home or anywhere when it counts. You must think at school with all those good grades you bring home, and you've always got your nose in a book, but do you ever use your head for common sense? No siree, bub. And if you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. So here his brother is encouraging him to carry a knife to protect himself. So that gives you can make the assumption that that's a pretty tough neighborhood. And also we learned that Pony Boy is a good student because he says you must think at school with all those good grades you bring home. So he's a good student, which doesn't really fit in with the persona of these other characters, correct? They're pretty tough, street smart hoods. And here's this brainiac kid. I just stared at the hole in the toe of my tennis shoe. Me and Darry just didn't dig each other. I never could please him. He would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. If I brought home B's, he wanted A's. And if I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. If I was playing football, I should be in studying. And if I was reading, I should be out playing football. He never hollered at Soda Pop, not even when Soda dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding. He just hollered at me. So that the way he's treating Pony Boy, it's kind of parental, right? Like about nagging him about his grades. I mean, that's not always the typical brother role. But remember, the parents are gone. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone, you hear? It ain't his fault he likes to go to the movies, and it ain't his fault the socials like to jump us. And if he had been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse to cut him to ribbons. Soda always sticks up for me. Darry said impatiently, when I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my other kid brother, I'll ask you, kid brother. But he laid off me. He always does when Soda Pop tells him to. Most of the time. Next time, get one of us to go with you, Pony Boy, Two-Bit said. Any of us will. Speaking of movies, Dally yawned, flipping away his cigarette butt. I'm walking over to the Nightly Double tomorrow night. Anybody want to come and hunt up some action? Steve shook his head. Me and Soda are picking up Evie and Sandy for the game. He didn't need to look at me the way he did right then. I wasn't going to ask if I could come. I'd never tell Soda because he really likes Steve a lot. But sometimes I can't stand Steve Randall. I mean it. Sometimes I hate him. Darry sighed, just like I knew he would. Darry never had time to do anything anymore. I'm working tomorrow night. Dally looked at the rest of us. How about y'all? Two-Bit, Johnny Cake, you and Pony want to come? Me and Johnny will come, I said. I knew Johnny wouldn't open his mouth unless he was forced to. Okay, Darry? Yeah, since it ain't a school night. Darry was real good about letting me go places on the weekends. On school nights, I could barely leave the house. I was planning on getting boozed up tomorrow night, Two-Bit said. If I don't, I'll walk over and find y'all. Steve was looking at Dally's hand. His ring, which he had rolled a drunk senior to get, was back on his finger. You break up with Sylvia again? Yeah, and this time it's for good. That little broad was two-timing me again while I was in jail. I thought of Sylvia and Evie and Sandy and Two-Bit's many blondes. They were the only kind of girls that would look at us, I thought. Tough, loud girls who wore too much eye makeup and giggled and swore too much. I liked Soda's girl Sandy just fine, though. Her hair was natural blonde and her laugh was soft, like her china blue eyes. She didn't have a real good home or anything and was our kind greaser, but she was a real nice girl. Still, lots of times I wondered what other girls were like. The girls who were bright-eyed and had their dresses a decent length and acted as if they'd like to spit on us if given a chance. Some were afraid of us, and remembering Dallas Winston, I didn't blame them, but most looked at us like we were dirt, gave us the same kind of look that the Socias did when they came by in their Mustangs and Corvairs and yelled grease at us. I wondered about them. The girls, I mean. Did they cry when their boys were arrested like Evie did when Steve got hauled in? Or did they run out on them the way Sylvia did Dallas? But maybe their boys didn't get arrested or beaten up or busted up in rodeos. I was still thinking about it while I was doing my homework that night. I had to read Great Expectations for English. And that kid Pip, he reminded me of us. The way he felt marked lousy because he wasn't a gentleman or anything. And the way that girl kept looking down on him. Okay, so there's an allusion to Great Expectations, and we talked about that by Charles Dickens. That happened to me once. One time in biology, I had to dissect a worm, and the razor wouldn't cut, so I used my switchblade. The minute I flicked it out, I forgot what I was doing. I would have never done it. This girl right beside me kind of gasped and said, "They are right. You are a hood." That didn't make me feel so hot. There were a lot of Socias in that class. I get put into A classes because I'm supposed to be smart, and most of them thought it was pretty funny. I didn't, though. She was a cute girl. She looked really good in yellow. We deserve a lot of our trouble, I thought. He's kind of reflecting here. He's like thinking about himself and his life. Dallas deserves everything he gets and should get worse if you want the truth. And Two-Bit, he doesn't really want for or need half the things he swipes from stores. He just thinks it's fun to swipe everything that isn't nailed down. I can understand why Soda Pop and Steve get into drag races and fight so much, though. Both of them have too much energy, too much feeling, with no way to blow it off. "Rub harder, Soda," I heard Dari mumbling. "You're going to put me to sleep." I looked through the door. Soda Pop was giving Dari a back rub. Dari is always pulling muscles. He roofs houses, and he's always trying to carry 2 bundles of roofing up the ladder. I knew Soda would put him to sleep because Soda can put about anyone out when he sets his head to it. He thought Dari worked too hard anyway. I did too. Dari didn't deserve to work like an old man when he was only 20. He had been a real popular guy in school. He was captain of the football team, and he had been voted Boy of the Year. But we just didn't have the money for him to go to college, even with the athletic scholarship he won. And now he didn't have time between jobs to even think about college. So he never went anywhere and never did anything anymore, except work out at gyms and go skiing with some old friends of his sometimes. So we just learned a lot about Dari. He could have went to college on a scholarship, and he had to turn that down. He couldn't better himself. I rubbed my cheek where it had turned purple. I had looked in the mirror, and it did make me look tough, but Dari had made me put a Band-Aid on the cut. I remembered how awful Johnny had looked when he got beaten up. I had just as much right to use the streets as the Socias did, and Johnny had never hurt them. Why did the Socias hate us so much? We left them alone. I nearly went to sleep over my homework trying to figure it out. Soda Pop, who had jumped into bed by this time, yelled sleepily for me to turn off the light and go to bed. When I finished the chapter I was on, I did. Lying beside Soda, staring at the wall, I kept remembering the faces of the Socias as they surrounded me. That blue Madras shirt with the blonde was wearing, and I could still hear a thick voice. "Need a haircut, greaser?" I shivered. You cold, Pony Boy? A little, I lied. Soda threw one arm across my neck. He mumbled something drowsily. Listen, kiddo, when Derry hollers at you, he don't mean nothing. He's just got more worries than somebody his age ought to. Don't take him serious. You dig, Pony? Don't let him bug you. He's really proud of you because you're so brainy. It's just because you're the baby. I mean, he loves you a lot. Savvy? Sure, I said, trying for Soda's sake to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Soda? Yeah. How come you dropped out? I had never gotten over that. I could hardly stand it when he left school. 'Cause I'm dumb. The only things I was passing anyway were auto mechanics and gym. You're not dumb. Yeah, I am. Shut up and I'll tell you something. Don't tell Derry, though. Okay, I think I'm going to marry Sandy. After she gets out of school and I get a better job and everything. I might wait till you get out of school, though, so I can still help Derry with the bills and stuff. Tough enough. Wait till I get out, though, so you can keep Derry off my back. Don't be like that, kid. I told you, he don't mean half of what he says. You in love with Sandy? What's it like? He sighed happily. It's real nice. In a moment, his breathing was light and regular. I turned my head to look at him, and in the moonlight, he looked like some Greek god come to earth. I wondered how he could stand being so handsome. Then I sighed. I didn't quite get what he meant about Derry. Derry thought I was just another mouth to feed and somebody to holler at. Derry love me? I thought of those hard, pale eyes. Soda was wrong for once, I thought. Derry doesn't love anyone or anything, except maybe Soda. I didn't hardly think of him as being human. I don't care, I lied to myself. I don't care about him either. Soda's enough, and I'd have him until I got out of school. I don't care about Derry. But I was still lying, and I knew it. I lie to myself all the time, but I never believe me. And that's the end of chapter 1. We learned so much about Pony Boy and his feelings for his brother and how he thinks his brother feels about him and his perceptions of the people in his life. Okay, we'll discuss this in class.